Welcome back. Now I'm going to ask you to do this by yourselves. But shall we examine it first? If I stand here, can you still hear me? Right. If I stand here, put my glasses on so I can see, we can talk about the image on the screen, because we want to examine the shadows. Now remember, you are putting in only the shadows. You're not making them darker or lighter. Just wherever there's a shadow, that's what you're putting in. Have a look and see where the highlights are. There's a highlight on the top of his little hat. There's a corner of a highlight on the right-hand side of his little hat, and on the left-hand side, catching the brim. The rest of the hat is in shadow. Varying shadow, but shadow. So shadow is what we're thinking of. Right. His face is entirely in shadow. Don't think because that's his face and that's his hat, it's a different shadow. His face is in shadow, the side of the hat is in shadow, so you paint the side of the hat and the face all in one brushstroke. Okay, now let's look at his shirt. The light is catching the right-hand shoulder as we look, but the back of the shirt, the back of his right-hand sleeve, the whole of his other sleeve is in shadow. All of his left arm, except a little bit, like catching the front as his arm goes forward. There's a slither of light on his elbow on the right-hand side. Most of the shirt, apart from a bit underneath his left-hand elbow, is in shadow. All of his trousers, except a slither of light down the side, particularly near the bottom, where the pants turn into leg. His left leg is all in shadow. Even his socks are in shadow. They might be white, but they're in shadow. And the shoes. And on the right-hand leg, most of the leg is in shadow, apart from a slither of light down the edge. Most of his sock is in shadow, except for the bit catching the front of his sock and the front of his foot. Now, are you clear? You are not looking at how dark or how light the shadows are. You are not trying to draw the little boy. You're trying to paint all the shadows in the right place. If you think it's too hard, turn it upside down and do it that way. It'll work. Okay. Ultramarine. This is where we are going to use a bit of burnt sienna afterwards. Okay. So I'm going to give you time to do that now. And don't make it too small, about that size. Nice big boy, please. Yes. If you make him too little, he will, you'll find trouble getting anything sensible in. Do not draw him at all. Just do the shadows. I know it's hard, but if you learn to do it now, you'll bless me forever. Just painting the shadows. And remember, you're not making a heavy shadow, just a shadow. Don't draw with your brush either. It was not. She's been a very good girl recently. And it won't look anything like a little boy when you're finished. Right. So when you've done that, the next thing to do is to put in the slightly darker shadows. And I think it would probably help at this stage to do what 3 people in the room have done first, and that is put the background in next. Now, the little boy stands out because he's against the dark background. Forget all the lines going across him, just assume he's on a black background. Right. Now, when you're putting in the background, you've got to leave those little slithers of light that I pointed out in the beginning. The little slither of light on his hat, on the top of his hat, on the front of his hat, on his shoulder, on his arm, on the side of his pants, and on the front of this sock and leg. So you've got to leave those shadows out. You've got to leave those light pieces out of your thing. So the white paper acts as those light pieces. Okay, so you're painting the background in much darker paint than you painted the shadows. So you need more paint, less pigment, and you're going round the little boy, which should be easier, but you are leaving between the shadow you painted and the shadow shadow you're painting now. You're leaving the light places. Okay. Gosh. Anybody not understand? Do shout out. Ultramarine again. Yes. You're dying to use the other one. It'll come right at the end. Remember, if you want it darker, it's more paint, less water. So now then, we go to the next stage. We're still not putting any of that burnt sienna in yet. Going back to blue again. Now this time we're going to work on the shadows that are on the little boy. So if you look at your little boy, his pants are slightly darker than his shirt, quite a lot darker. There's a shadow where his sleeve comes up against his shirt, which is slightly darker than the shadow on the back of his shirt, just slightly. There is where his other sleeve is, his right sleeve, he's got quite a thin dark shadow there, separating his sleeve from his body. You can't see that. Sorry. Right, that shadow there. There is, the boy's little face is quite darker, so you can darken the shadow of that. Still with your ultramarine. Some of the shadows on the hat near the brim are a little bit darker. There's kind of dressing of shadow in there. So what you're trying to do now is pull out the internal shadows of your little boy so that you get more feeling of dark and light. So his face, both his arms and both his legs are quite a lot darker than we've got them. Don't take it very, very dark, just darker. Not as dark as your background, just a little bit darker. There's a lovely dark shadow on his right leg where his pants separate, so to speak. There's a nice dark shadow on the inside of his leg there, going up diagonally, which gives the twist to his body. There's a bit of a shadow underneath his pants where his legs are. Hunt them out and see if you can find all those little shadows and put them in as slightly darker shadows, but not as dark as the background. So this is tonal balance, like we were looking at last week. You're looking for a mid-tone. Yes. We've got less than 5 minutes left on the Zoom, so I'm going to talk to the people on the Zoom. So you just carry on with what you're doing. The next picture, Zoom people, that we're going to be painting is this one. And I'd like you to do it yourselves from the beginning with all the shadows and increasing the shadows as you need them, and then introducing a bit of color right at the bitter end. If you think that's going to be too difficult, have another go at the little boy, see if you can get him better. That's the basic idea. But the class here will be working on this picture while you're having a cup of tea. That's the basic idea. I need to put in some slightly darker shadows and the burnt sienna on the boy's skin in this picture, which is what I'll be doing next. But by that time, I think the Zoom will have finished. And I can't put it on now because it's wet. So we've just got to wait until it dries before we can do that. Sorry about the rush, but then I think we've taken time to do something a bit more carefully, and I hope it's been of assistance to you.